Hi and welcome to the first part of this Blender tutorial. Here we will learn to make this animated sci-fi sphere. This is a beginner-friendly tutorial where we will be using Eevee. In part 1 we will be using geometry nodes and then we will do some basic modeling. Then in part 2 we will add materials, animate the sphere, and then polish the render in Compositing Nodes. This version of the sphere is made in Eevee. I also created another version of the sphere in Cycles, and in this tutorial I will give you the tools to create the cycled version, and I will challenge you to try it out on your own after finishing this tutorial. Open a new blend file. You can see the screencast keys down here. First we will delete the camera and light. Start by selecting the camera. Hold down Shift and select the light. Then press X on your keyboard and delete. We will actually keep the default cube and it's probably very happy to be of use. Next, we'll set up some simple geometry nodes. The setup is quick and easy, so don't worry. Go up to the Geometry Node tab. Make sure your cube is selected and press New to add geometry nodes. Just like with material nodes, you can search for nodes by pressing Shift and A and search. First, we will delete the group input node. So select it, press X and delete. And that made our cube disappear, but we will bring it back, though a bit transformed. Press Shift and A and search for the icosphere. Drop it here and leave some space for 2 more nodes. Then connect mesh to geometry in the geometry output node. And look, our cube has now been transformed into an icosphere. Let's increase the subdivisions. 2 or 3 should be fine. I'll go for 3 to make the faces a bit smaller. If you want the circles in the end result to be a bit bigger, you can go with 2. As you can see, the faces are triangles, and we want to turn them into hexagons with 6 sides instead of 3. In order to do that, we need to use a node called Dual Mesh. Press Shift and A and search for Dual Mesh. This node, this node converts faces into vertices and vertices into faces. So for example, this face will be turned into a vert, and these vertices will be turned into faces. This will duplicate the number of sides on each face. Drop the node between the other 2. And now we have some nice hexagons. We want the sphere to be made up of individual faces so that we can scale and change them individually. To do that, we need the split edge node. So press Shift and A and search for split edges. Then drop it here. It doesn't look like anything has changed, but we will see the result in just a minute. Okay, we're all done with geometry nodes now. That was easier, right? So let's go back to layout, back to our safe environment. If we press Tab and go into edit mode, we can see that the outline of the icosphere is still the default cube. But since we want to manipulate the mesh on the icosphere, we need to change this. So I'll tab back into object mode. In order to change the mesh of the icosphere, we will have to do what's called a disruptive change to our mesh. Disruptive changes are changes that are permanent or very difficult to revert once they're done. When you are about to do disruptive changes to a mesh in Blender, it's good to have a backup you can go back to if you should mess something up. You can do this by either saving your file as a different version or duplicate the object before making a disruptive change. To duplicate the object, let's select it while in object mode. Press Shift and D, and this creates a new copy of the mesh. Then you can drop it wherever you want. Let's hide the duplicate from viewport and render view by clicking these buttons. Now we have a backup that we can go back to if needed. And let's convert the default cube into a permanent icosphere. Go to Modifier Properties this little wrench here, then press the arrow to get a drop-down menu and apply the geometry nodes. And if we now tab into edit mode, we will see that the default cube has turned into an icosphere. One thing I just remembered, I use tab a lot to go back and forth between object and edit mode, but you can also switch between the two modes up in this menu here. Okay, so go into edit mode and we can click on the face select button up here, or you can go to face select by pressing 3 on your keyboard, not the numpad. Press A to select all the faces, and we want to inset the faces to give them a bit more geometry before turning them into circles. If we press S to scale and move the mouse back and forth, this scales the whole sphere. But we want to scale and change each face individually. To do that, we have to go up to the Transform Pivot Point menu. Select individual origins instead of median origin. This lets us change the geometry of each face on the sphere based on each face's origin point, meaning the middle of each face. If we press S to scale now, we can scale down each face separately. And this is a hint if you want to create the cycle version of the Sci-Fi Sphere. Instead, we want to inset our faces. So press A to make sure you have selected your whole sphere, then press I to inset, then move your mouse to create a new smaller face inside each face. Something like this. Next, we want to extrude the faces inwards, so make sure the selected faces are all selected. If you accidentally deselected them, press Ctrl and Z and go back to where all the faces were selected. Since we've changed the pivot points to individual faces, we could press E to extrude the faces. But this creates a line for each face, making it really hard to see what we're doing. So instead, press Alt and E and then extrude faces along normals. Use your mouse to change the size and direction of the extrusion. If you want, you can play around with this, maybe extrude the faces outwards to create something cool. But for the purpose of this tutorial, we will extrude the faces inwards to something like this. Next, we'll delete the middle faces. With the extruded faces still selected, press X on your keyboard and delete faces. And now we have this mesh with hexagon-shaped holes. Let's tab back into object mode, then select the sphere and right-click on it, then shade smooth. Next, let's go back to modifier properties. Then add a solidify modifier to give the sphere some depth. You can find this under general. Before adding this, each face on the sphere is paper thin. So add solidify. And I will leave most of the settings as they are, but I will turn on even thickness. You can make this thicker if you want, or maybe offset it. I'll undo that. We'll also add a subdivision surface modifier. This is also under general. Let's increase the levels to 2, and we now have these circles. Oh, it looks like I forgot to shade this smooth. Now that looks better. You can increase the levels to 3 if you think your computer can handle it to get an even smoother result. Okay, we're done with the outer sphere. So let's add the inner sphere with the glowing material. In object mode, press Shift and A, go to Mesh and select Icosphere. Now before you click on anything, you have this little menu down here. And if you click on something, that menu disappears. If that should happen, go back and add the Icosphere again to get it back. Okay, so click on the menu to open it, and we will increase the subdivisions to 4 to get a smoother sphere. Then right-click on the new icosphere and shade it smooth. Our new sphere is covering the circles, so we need to scale it down. Select a new icosphere and then press Tab to go into edit mode, or use the menu up here. Press A to select everything, then press S to scale it down and move your mouse until it overlaps slightly with the circles. If you want to scale it in smaller increments for more precision, you can press S to scale and then hold down Shift while moving your mouse. So I will go with something like this. Lastly, we will add a plane as a background, and then we will be all done with the modeling. Shift and A, select Mesh and add a plane. With the plane selected, press R to rotate and then press X and type 90 to turn it 90 degrees on the X-axis. Then press G and Y to move the plane on the Y-axis. I'll place it somewhere around here, and we can always move this later if needed. We want to scale this, so press Tab to go into edit mode. I prefer to scale objects in edit mode if I can, as scaling in object mode will change the proportions of the object. This can cause problems when you add modifiers, bevel the object, or add materials. I'll give you an example. So right now the plane's proportions are 1:1:1. If I scale it in object mode, the properties will change. And if I scale it only on the X-axis, the relationship between the sides are no longer 1:1:1. If you do scale an object in object mode, make sure to apply that scale. To apply the scale, select the object, press Ctrl and A and apply scale. And now the proportions are correct again. Okay, I'll go into edit mode to edit this. I'll scale it up on the X-axis and Y-axis. Then press 1 on your numpad to go to front view. And it looks like I need to move the plane. So select the plane, press G and Y and move it behind the sphere. Press numpad 1 again to go to front view. Let's add a camera. Press Shift and A and select camera. The camera is in the middle of the sphere, so let's move the camera to our current view. To snap the camera to our current view, you just press Ctrl, Alt and numpad 0 and the camera will move. I also want to move the camera back a bit, so select the camera from the menu and you can see the camera's view. It's the box right here. So select the camera, then press G to move and press your mouse wheel twice. And you can slide the camera back and forth by moving your mouse back and forth. I want to scale the plane up a bit to cover the camera's view. Go to edit mode, A to select all, S to scale and set to scale on the Z axis. And then S to scale and X to scale on the X axis. That's it for the modeling in part 1 of the series. In part 2, we will create an animated glowing material, a metallic shader with some details, and we will learn some basic animation while animating the outer sphere. And we'll finish it all off by polishing our animation with compositing nodes before we render the whole animation. So I hope to see you in part 2. Bye!